Let's talk about the business meeting itself. You need to ask a committee ahead of time, like how their budget process works and, how their business meeting works. And if the pastor is expected to moderate. Now, a lot of churches don't want their pastor moderating the business meeting. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing. At Buck Run, the way our Constitution reads is I have the right, I'm the moderator, but every year I declare whether I want to moderate in the coming year or not. And if I don't, our vice moderator then becomes the moderator. And we have a vice moderator, but so far every year I moderate our business meetings. If I want to speak to an issue, I'll ask our vice moderator to take over so that I can speak to the issue in favor of it or against it, as the case may be. I don't think I've ever spoken against anything, but every now and then I wanted to make everybody understand I'm really behind this. I want us to do this and to put my full force behind it. So I'll ask our vice moderator to take over so I can do that. If you moderate, you really need to get acquainted with Robert's Rules. Most churches adopt Robert's Rules as their parliamentary procedure. Few churches adhere to them, but they like to think they do. You still need to know them, because if you ever have the delight and joy of a retired pastor joining your congregation who prides himself on his knowledge of Robert's Rules, you better know them at least as well as he does, if not better. Now, I've had this very thing happen once, and it was not a pleasant thing. Let me recommend to you a little book. First of all, get you a copy of Robert's Rules. Just buy a copy of it, a little gold book, pretty thick. But what the book you really want is the book by C. Barry McCarty, who is the chief parliamentarian of the Southern Baptist Convention, and it's something like I think it's on our book list, but it's about parliamentary procedure for churches. I think is the name of it. Barry McCarty is now a professor at Southwestern Seminary. He teaches preaching. He's been the chief parliamentarian of the SBC for 30 years, long time. And his little book just explains to you the basics of Robert's Rules, what you really need to know in a church setting. And I recommend you get that. And you need to know the difference in calling the question and moving the question and point of personal privilege and a point of order. And if somebody joins your church that just thinks they really know something about it and they pull that stuff out and you don't know how to handle it, you're going to be in trouble. Furthermore, just in case, some of you, you might one day be the president of your state convention or your local association or even the SBC. We might have a president of the Southern Baptist Convention in this room right now. And you'll need to moderate. You need to not look like you're totally lost when you're doing it. When I moderated the Kentucky Baptist Convention, the year I was president, we had one very contentious issue come up, and I really studied and knew ahead of time exactly how to handle it. And I'll tell you the little trick about Robert's Rules. When you're the chair, you can pretty much do anything you want so long as the body will sustain you. That's just a little thing. So we presented a motion about the departure of Georgetown College from the KBC the year I was president. And when we presented it, I said, because this is an agreement with another organization, the chair will not entertain any amendments or changes to the motion. And there were 10 people lined up at microphones who just sat down just because I said it. Now, any one of them could have gone to the microphone and said, I challenge the chair. And because they have the right to amend anything. Now, it can make the other organization, Georgetown College in this case, say, well, that's not the agreement we've already hammered out. We're not party to it anymore. But the body can do whatever the body wants to do. And all they had to do was say, I challenge the chair. Well, I then would have had to take a vote from the body whether or not they would accept my ruling to not take amendments. And I would have had to have had a 51% vote. But they could have challenged it. But when I said it, just because I said it with authority, they just sat down. So learn from that. Act like you know what you're doing. It goes a long way. Just act like you know what you're doing, and people will trust you a little bit more. So if you know enough about Robert's Rules that you can answer it and explain a little bit about it, not get sort of an end run around you, what you want to happen, you'll be all right. But you need to have those books in your library and be able to use parliamentary procedure well. And it's up to you, if you're in a church where you get a choice whether or not you're the moderator, I don't feel strongly about it one way or the other. There are advantages both ways. But at Buck Run, I've been there 15 years. We've not once had a contentious business meeting. And it wasn't contentious, but when we changed those bylaws 7 years in, I had one deacon stand up, and the bylaws did give me a lot more authority to make quick decisions. And he said, I love Dr. York, and I trust Dr. York. Dr. York's not always going to be our pastor. We might have a pastor in the future that we don't trust as much. And I'm not sure that I would want anybody else to have all of the authority that this gives them. I think it gives the pastor a little too much authority, and therefore I'm opposed to this change. I thought he did that real well. When he sat down, I commended him. I wanted everybody to see that's how you disagree, right there. That was it. He did that wonderfully. He did it kindly, graciously. He made sure it didn't look like his problem was with me. He stated his case well, and I commended him and thanked him for the way he did it. And then we voted and changed the bylaws. I think he might have swayed 3 other people, and that was it. But he did it well, and that way he wasn't demeaned. He didn't feel like he upset me, and he was encouraged. So the way you handle business, I will tell you the main thing here is don't bring tension in the room. Don't get upset with people. Don't let the splotches on your neck pop out. Don't demean them. Just, you got to keep your cool. And because if you lose it, you really lose credibility. Even though someone might have really, in a sense, deserved it, people are going to think less of you and your leadership if you fall prey to it. So if you're the kind that gets uptight or upset, you might want to have someone else be the moderator. But make sure that your business meetings are as joyful as they can be. I always pray at the beginning of a business meeting, and in my prayer, consecrated to the Lord, and remind everyone that the way we conduct our business is as important and as much an act of worship as the way we sing or preach or pray. It is conducting the Lord's business, and we want to do it well. All right. Any questions about that? Any questions about business meetings? How many of you have ever been in a bad church business meeting? By bad, I mean contentious, angry. Any of you ever been in those? You have? They're not fun. And they can do a lot of damage. So you really, again, make sure you're not the one who brings tension in the room. Just very quickly, let's talk just a little bit about capital programs and building campaigns. Let me just give you a little bit of advice about buildings. In all three churches I have pastored, they had to build a new building. Now, Marion was a little bit of a cheat because the church burned down. But while I was there, we bought property, and the church was growing. And then after I left, not long after I left, it burned down. By the way, our church treasurer, a little lady named Maggie Sue Goodwin, lived right across the street from the church. John, you remember Maggie Sue? She lived across the street from the church. Her father had been the pastor. She was in her 80s. I loved this lady. She had been an elementary school principal, very frugal. She'd buy a car, drive it till the wheels fell off, 18 years later or something. When she died, she left. She had no heirs. She had no children. She had married later in life and was only married 13 years before her husband died. So she left everything she owned to the church. It was $8 million. And so when Marion moved, they built a new building pretty much debt-free. Ashland Avenue, we bought the property before I left, but they didn't build till after I was gone. But at Buck Run, they bought the property before I got there, but I have gone through the building process. So I know a little bit about the moving and building, and here's my advice to you. Don't build unless you must. Just don't do it. If there's any way at all to avoid it, avoid it. We were in a situation where we could not do anything else where we were. We were maxed out. We were enclosed on three sides by water, so there was no expanding. Couldn't build up. We had no parking. We kept having flooding. We had to move. The church had already made the decision to do it before I got there. I had to hold them off. In 2012, so I came in December of 03. In 2012, I stood in the pulpit and I preached a sermon about where Moses goes to Pharaoh and says, "Let us go and offer to the Lord." Pharaoh says, "No, don't go." Moses says, "We're going." And Pharaoh says, "Well, just go a little way out there." Moses said, "No, we're going all the way." He said, "Well, leave your children here." Moses says, "We're taking everybody." He says, "Well, just go out a little while and leave your stuff here." Moses said, "We're taking all we got." Those are my 4 points of my sermon. We're going all the way. We're taking everybody. We're taking all we got. And it was September of 2012. I said we're going to build, and we're going to be in it by Easter of 2017. And we were in it by November of 16. So we got in it ahead of schedule. The whole time we were building, I lived in fear and terror. There's no other way of saying it. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you're missing. And you fear getting in that building and learning the terrible mistake you made too late. We spent $10 million on that building. $10 million. I mean, we set out, I said, we're not going to build any, we're not going to spend more than $7 million on this. It just kept going up, kept going up, kept going up. They said, "Oh, we can get you in this building for $7 million. It was $10 million. And then there's so much stuff you left out, you leave out. There's stuff you don't get. You're just in the whole time you're going, "Oh no, what if we spent $10 million and it doesn't do anything for us? What if we don't grow? What if we don't reach new people? What if it's a lateral move? Why did we spend $10 million to stay what we are and who we are? What about our missionaries?" And all this is just over and over in your mind. What if people don't give? What if we get in it and people don't like it? Here I'm telling you, build a masculine building. What if women don't like it? I mean, every possible objection comes to your mind. And then you've got to convince people to go, to give, and I'll use this word advisedly, sacrificially, right? There's a sense in which it's impossible for you and I to ever give anything to Jesus sacrificially. What can we sacrifice for him? But you know what I mean when I say it. You're doing without other things in order to give. And man, I got people on fixed incomes, and I had people, poor people, I got ex-cons, very limited income, and to ask them to give, it's just a burden. So my best advice to you is don't build unless you have to. If you can remodel and refurbish and make it nice and stay where you are, or get creative and do multiple services or multiple locations, I'm all for it. We tried multiple locations at Buck Run. We did it for 3 years. And I just heard it over and over. It's just not who Buck Run is. People kept saying, "Oh, I just miss all the other people. Oh, I just wish we could all be together." They followed my leadership. They did what I asked them. We'd set up and take down every Sunday. But I knew it wasn't doing for us what we wanted it to do and thought it would do. So we had to build. And I will tell you, as of this week, our debt has now went under $6 million. So to be 2 years in a project that's total worth is $12 million, and to be less than $6 million in debt, I'm really happy with. Not only that, we didn't make any major mistakes. We got in the building and we nailed it. By the grace of God, we nailed it. It's exactly what we wanted it to be. I can tell you 2 little minor things that I wish we'd done differently, and I certainly wish we had more money and could have done more. We don't have a kitchen, a real kitchen. We have a warming kitchen, but we have everything catered in. We don't do any cooking on property. I miss that. But we need another $500,000 to make we have a pavilion out back. We want to convert to a fellowship hall, but it's at least another $500,000. So it might happen in the next year or two, but we're doing well, and the sanctuary is just absolutely beautiful, comfortable. The sound quality is fantastic. There's just so much I like about it. And this year, with all of the flooding, our old property it's had a rough time. The guy that bought it from us has dealt with flooding all year long. It's a record wet year in Kentucky. So I'm grateful. The Lord blessed us in it. It's a big debt to go to bed with every night, of great responsibility. I will tell you, there are a lot of jobs open in SBC right now, and I've been asked if I were interested in a few of them, and my answer is absolutely not. I'm not walking out on Buck Run with that debt. I'm there to get at least most of it taken care of before I go off the scene, if at all possible. The other thing I'll tell you, they took out a $5 million life insurance policy on me, which means they won't fire me, but they may kill me. So that's an odd feeling as well, that I'm worth a lot more dead than alive. But it's been a healthy process. I knew all along, I'll tell you, that the thing that is most crucial is that you get the right people on your team making the decisions for what the building is going to be and where you're going to put your priorities. And that's probably going to be your most difficult step, because there's no way to do that by popular vote. Leadership is going to have to make that initiative and that move. And it was the most controversial part of our move. When I put out there who I wanted on, I put as many people on the team as I thought was manageable, and that number was 18. But when you divide it up, somebody's got to make decisions about the children's wing, somebody's got to make decisions about the youth, someone has to make decisions about the adults, someone has to do the sanctuary, someone else the lobby, someone else the parking. 18 people, they're busy. And you're doing meetings every month and managing the budget and hearing reports and meeting with the builder. And I remember the day I looked at the builder, and I knew we either had to get in by the 1st of November, or we might as well wait till Easter, because you couldn't count on weather, and there were several other factors. You got Christmas, New Year's. So I looked at the builder and I said, "Can you get us in there by November 6th?" And that, you're talking, this was about a year in advance. The total building process was 14 months of actual building. And there's just so many moving parts. And guys, I'm a preacher. I'm a Bible guy. I'm not a builder. I don't know squat about managing budgets and any of that. But I got to lead the people who do. And so it really stretched me and challenged me. I'm still teaching full-time at Southern the whole time. Now, they were very gracious here. They lightened my teaching schedule. That was such a kind thing of Dr. Wills. They really took care of me. But it was hard. And so you got so much to think about. Don't measure your success by whether or not you build a building. Back in the 80s, everybody, that's the way they all measure success. Oh, went to a church and they had to build a new building. To me, that is such a last resort. Don't be quick to do that. Don't think that measures your success at all. Only do it if you have to. And if you have to, you got to get everybody on board. You got to get everybody committed to giving, to participating. And you got to manage it all and make sure that it does for you what you need it to do. It's a tool. But if that's the thing you aim for, then once you're in it, then what? So leadership has to point people past getting in there and making it about. So, a few things that I did. I made sure they understood that we're not building this for us. We're building it for future generations. Not one interior wall in our building is a load-bearing wall. And that's just so, 30 years from now, they want to come in and just gut it and totally redo the inside of that whole building. They can do it. And I tried to do everything forward-thinking. How will this affect future generations? Because the original Buck Run was up Georgetown Road toward Georgetown in 1818. In 1888, they moved to the Forks of Elkhorn. And who the church became in the 1990s could not have happened had they not made that move in the 1880s. Now you think about it. They made a move. They had no idea what would impact people 100 years later. But Buck Run could have that incredible revival and growth in the 1990s because those people made a move in 1888. And I was always telling our people, this is a generational move. This is about the future. And I'm convinced in the future, churches who believe what we believe won't be able to get a loan from a bank. 30 years from now, do you really think a church that believes what we do about gender and gay marriage, anybody's going to want to do business with? Man, it's like the mark of the beast. You don't have it in your hand or your forehead, you're not doing business. 100 acres, we're ensuring the future. We're going to get this thing built and paid for so that if that happens, we're okay. And I'm not a gloom and doom, apocalyptic kind of guy. I just think that's what's happening in our country. So I want to ensure that we're okay. So all of that comes into play as you're thinking through how to build, how to strategize. It's more than just getting in a new building. It's about how it affects your future.